We will now have Dr. Anne Lee Kringen, who is an assistant professor of criminal justice at University of New Haven. And I have to give a shout out to her husband and the little baby out there. Both of them, one for the baby to be so quiet and for the husband to be the perfect husband, all right, at this point. So Dr. Anne Lee Kringen's research considers diversification in policing, specifically focusing on hiring practices that limit female participation. She has conducted multiple projects, research projects on issues in policing in conjunction with the National Police Foundation. Today she will address issues of diversity in law enforcement.
Hi, good morning. I'm here today to discuss barriers in hiring that limit female participation in policing. I want to clarify that while I'm discussing these barriers in the context of the female experience, they also limit other types of diversification in policing, including racial and ethnic. Almost 20 years ago, the National Center for Women in Policing published their self-assessment guide for recruiting and retaining women, which identified several issues of police selection that pose barriers. Among other things, the NCWP guide identified job relatedness of selection components, bias in testing processes, and record keeping as key issues. Since the report was issued, a substantial body of research has validated that specific components disproportionately impact women. As well, the research has provided greater insight into the way these processes limit female participation. Despite the availability of the NCWP report and subsequent validation studies, it's unclear whether this evidence has had any impact on police hiring processes generally. Given that the levels of female representation in policing have remained stagnant for the last 15 years, around 13% nationally, it is reasonable to conclude that the available evidence has had little impact. This issue should be of concern given current issues in policing. Media coverage of public sentiment towards police suggests increased hostility. We have invested substantially in new technologies like body-worn cameras with the hope that video recordings will limit problematic interactions between officers and the public. Yet research suggests that more women working in policing may have a substantial impact on many of the issues that underlie current tensions between police and the communities they serve. Women are better at communication. In the policing context, this translates to being better equipped to de-escalate situations. Women are less likely to respond to verbal aggression with increased aggression. Also, evidence suggests that having more female officers can support perceptions of procedural justice. For these reasons, increasing female participation in policing should be a priority. My research shows how selection processes pose challenges to women seeking to become officers. In policing, a multiple hurdles approach in the selection process is common. Applicants must successfully navigate all stages of an ordered hiring process. These stages typically include steps like initial screening, physical and written exams, background investigations, and oral board assessments. Each of these stages has the potential to disproportionately impact women. Hiring processes in policing are subject to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission's rules on disparate impact, which require that any tests cannot have a disproportionate impact on any minority group. In the context of female applicants, the EEOC rules require that women pass stages at least 80% of the rate of men. While this rule provides a basis for challenging hiring processes as potentially unlawful, it fails to actually aid in diversification. Research demonstrates that the 80% threshold can be legally met while high rates of women fail to advance through particular stages. This happens because women may self-select out of the hiring process, which is not accounted for in an EEOC analysis. This problem may reflect women's experiences navigating the hiring process. Where some officers working in recruiting and hiring view their role as supporting applicants through the process, others adopt a prescriptive attitude that individuals, including women, who need encouragement are unsuited to the profession. Given differences in gender socialization and lower levels of social capital related to law enforcement, this attitude disproportionately impacts women. Thus, inherent bias resulting from an outdated view of what it takes to become a police officer makes it more likely that women will choose to opt out. In this way, gender bias results in women removing themselves from the process, obscuring the fact that several stages in the hiring process, while complying with EEOC rules, are problematic. To understand these issues, I spent a year as a researcher nested within a major metropolitan police department. I can say that the officers and command staff were supportive of my work and were grateful for my recommendations. After I reported my results, the department considered the impact of various rules and processes on recruiting women. This illustrates a key point that it is not necessarily that police departments do not want to diversify. Rather, two key problems may make it difficult for agencies to address this issue. First, many of the rules related to hiring are outside the control of individual departments. Second, police departments often lack any guidance as to how to diversify. To the first point, many of the rules that guide hiring processes are often established by civil service commissions. Appointment to these commissions can be political rather than based on expertise, and rules passed by these commissions strictly limit who can and cannot work as officers. Not all departments fall under civil service, yet even agencies not subject to civil service often maintain similar hiring rules and processes. These rules may not be related to bona fide occupational qualities for working in policing, and limited research supports their predictive validity. To the second point, there's no national level effort for disseminating information on what hiring practices are best suited for agencies interested in diversification. Likewise, when a rule is determined to be invalid in one jurisdiction, rarely is that information transmitted to other jurisdictions. As such, agencies are often in the dark about problematic hiring process. So how can this problem persist? Why do agencies that express interest in diversification find themselves ill-equipped to address the problem? This conundrum illustrates a key issue that there is no active mechanism for compiling and disseminating information on diversification in policing. The NCWP's guide has been available for almost 20 years, and research to date has supported many of its recommendations. This suggests that a lack of awareness is a key limitation. To address this challenge, I suggest that DOJ funding should be made available to an organization selected through a competitive process whose role would be assembling best practices from available research and developing tools departments can use to guide their hiring processes. The organization should be tasked with disseminating the results directly to departments. As well, the organization should provide technical assistance for training to help police departments implement best practices and maintain record keeping on hiring selection processes. Finally, the selected organization should work with departments to analyze the newly collected data to inform departments about their specific issues and to support the development of true evidence-based practices, evidence-based hiring practices. Additionally, the Law Enforcement Inclusion Act, which seeks to authorize COPS funding to hire and train officers who are residents of the community they serve, should be modified to include new female officers as well. Agencies complying with the dissemination best practices and involving in the data collection and research should receive priority consideration. Federal support for advancing women in other areas, such as STEM, reflects an understanding that women face substantial challenges entering historically male fields. Supporting women as they enter law enforcement careers addresses a similar gender issue while providing the substantial social benefit of improving the quality of policing within our communities. Thank you.